Hey, what's up? Here we are again, another week of the amazing Dirty South podcast with our guest Cabra Wrestling. We're going to have to change this to Dirty South and Cabra podcast. Plus, well, anyway, what's up, Jason? What's up,
Or
Brant?
or it
Hope you
could
guys
just be
had a
the
great
Dirty
week.
South podcast and Brant's
And
just a member of the Dirty
Just
South,
part of
right?
it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll take our ugly butts off of there and we'll add Brant in there too.
or you keep how it looks good now, and I continue on in my contributing role.
Yes, we can be Dirty South podcast with Jason, Brant, and me. And
Welcome
man,
everybody to our
welcome.
off-camera meeting.
Yeah, welcome everybody. It What a cool week. I mean, there's been some crazy things going on in the wrestling world. I mean, obviously, the world knows what happened yesterday with Bo Bassett going to choosing Iowa. So congratulations to him and his family. I know
Yep.
that young man must have alligator skin because, man, he is talked about more than anybody in the world. Good, bad, indifferent. He always takes it on the chin and keeps moving forward. And
So
good for
much
him.
negative, and I just don't understand why we feel this need to kind of attack. I mean, if you know Bo and you just have a conversation with him, there's at no moment in time
Right.
does he ever come across as being an asshole or anything else. He's just a nice kid.
A wonderful
I
kid.
don't understand why people really feel the need
And
to take
listen,
a shot at him.
you and I take photos at some pretty high level tournaments, right? That we have seen Bo at, right? And
Yeah.
there are kids and teams and coaches that if you walked up to and tried to communicate or wanted to get pictures of their kids there's some ego there. They may or may not let you. You may get a little pushback, right? Not at all. Everywhere I've been, whether it's been Fargo, whether it's been Peru, whether it's been anywhere I've seen Bo Bassett at and his family, they have always been more than welcoming to share
I
their progress, take pictures, talk to anybody and everybody. I just think it's a good family.
well, I don't I so I think people see, I'm starting off with every single logo and see it all as the promotion and everything else. And I'm like, guys, wake up, man. That's the world in which we live in. I mean,
How
the world of
smart is this
promotion
kid?
is the world of promotion, and it's just one of those things. And he talked, I don't know if you listened to some of this conversation, but he's like, people are spreading rumors about the NIL money and all these sorts of things. And he's like, I wish I was a top flight quarterback and was going to be able to make the money that they say I'm going to make. But the truth is, it's no. They're all comparable offers, and they're very solid and everything else. But I'm not making millions of dollars. That's just dumb,
Well,
you know?
I would imagine there was a lot of things that had to, a lot of these schools, I'm sure, have um, contracts with different brands. Obviously, we know he's a Rudis kid, and I don't know if it's true or not true, but I heard that obviously, Rudis has been good to him, and he wants to take Rudis with him where he goes, and I think that was part of the negotiations, and I think some schools, whether they're Nike or Reebok or whatever they are, it's
Yeah,
a problem, right?
yeah.
Um, but I think Jody Strickmatter being very influential in his life made a difference too. But anyway, good for him, good for his family. Some other things I noticed, and then we can get into everything else. Is and please, everybody, I don't remember everything I see, and I don't remember everything I hear, and I don't see everybody that's competing. So I just try to shout out some of the kids in college that I saw competing, or something happened good to this weekend. Where I saw Lily Luttrell was in the finals at a tournament. Shout out to her. I saw that Sofia Delgado had a good tournament, and she's now in the NAIA rankings. I
Ranked.
saw Val Solario now is ranked number fifth, going from non-ranked to fifth with a big win over, I believe it was Emily Gonzalez. I saw, and I'm trying to remember, Claire Bowie. I saw had a big weekend, and she was named one of like King Athlete of the Week or something, or Athlete of the Week for that. Um, and some boys, Eli Eli and Ethan Rivera are just doing big things at Princeton. We've seen Eli
Yeah, they
Rivera
are.
getting athlete of the week a couple times, and then Minto in Nebraska has just
Yep.
been on another level. And then shout out to
I mean, he sent the
Eli.
starter into retirement, did he not?
Yeah, And shout out to Eli over at UTC who got a 50th college win, which is huge. Those are some things I noticed of Florida kids being out and about. Um, and that's all I know. One question that I did get asked for a Georgia guy like you this weekend was what's been going on with Henson. They said they've seen him compete once or twice this year. And is he injured? Is he healthy? Is he just kind of staying under the radar right now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. There's been a lot of controversy. Probably the biggest controversy has to do with Gabe Arnold. And we'll touch on that here in a second. But um, it's it coaches do workload, management and anybody who has been around, those college wrestlers and everything else, they know they need to manage that workload. I mean, it is a long season. It is a grind. You got to figure out what works for you at this moment and everything else. I'm not saying some people don't duck. Some people, Henson doesn't duck anybody, but I mean, I'm not saying
Ever,
some
ever,
people
ever, ever, ever.
I'm not saying that some people don't take a particular match because they're trying to protect a seed at a particular tournament and all these stuff and everything else. That's the accusation against Gabe Arnold taking on Carter Shirachi, Penn State and Iowa duel. But I also think that you get nicked up. You get nicked up along the way, and if you got a twisted ankle, what am I getting by wrestling the third week of January where I can rest it for, 8 days, get on a bike, keep my cardio where it needs to be. I'm not injuring my my ankle any longer. And I mean, look, it all comes down to until the NCAA changes it and we have a dual state like national championship, everybody is going to do whatever they need to do to manage their own situation until you get to the tournaments that matter.
Yep.
Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I'm sure there was, and to Georgia and the rest of the Southeast, I need to get better at keeping an eye on your college kids. I know ours because this is where I am, and this is who I watch these kids grow up and take pictures of them, and now I see them on the next level, and
Yeah.
it's fun to catch good things about them going on out there, and I'm sure I missed a lot of people. And please, everybody,
I want to.
we do this show every Wednesday. So if you have a young lady or a young man that deserves a shout out, or you have somebody that did something big this week that you feel like deserves to get their name thrown out there, or a kid in college, maybe that we don't know, or we know but we haven't seen it, just hit us up, send us a message, put a comment on one of our things. Private message us. We'd love to give them a shout out. I think Brant would. I think Jason would. We'd love to do
Yeah, definitely message Dan. I agree.
You,
Message
you want to put
Dan.
his number down below? I mean, we can
Message
put his
Dan with
number.
everything.
Yeah.
I get 100 emails a week. I don't need any more. But no,
Oh, yeah.
but message us and tell us.
The one thing I will say, and I thought this was pretty cool, and then we can move on to the other stuff, and as long as you're giving shout outs, and that is Iowa State wrestled Oklahoma State, and it was so cool to see Iowa State's lineup at 33 and 41 with the Frost twins, who are from Metairie, Louisiana, went to Holy Cross in Metairie. Both got wins. Then you moved up to 57. You saw Cody Chittum get a win against Oklahoma State at 57. Cody's from Cleveland, Tennessee, went to Blair. And then you jumped all the way up to 197. You saw Sawyer Bartelt, wrestle at Hilton against, one of the best kids in the country from Oklahoma State. And yeah, he took a loss. He actually got a little injured in the match. But man, you had 4 out of the 10 that were from the Southeast in the Iowa State lineup. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some, I think the Southeast kids are really putting a stamp in college wrestling on every level. I mean, we see kids even at my son's school watching Christian Guzman and seeing the things that he's been doing over the last 2 years, and he's getting ready to go into the national tournament. The young man is undefeated this year. He hasn't been beat. His goal is the only 2 losses he's taken over the last 2 years in the national tournament is to the young man at Johnson and Wales who's won the tournament, and he wants to wrestle him again. I know they asked if he was going to move weight or do anything there. He said, "Hell no, I want to wrestle the kid again." So we're going to get to see that happen again. And yeah, he's doing big things there. And we could go through the whole landscape, but I know Grant Parsons. We had 2 of our 2 big tournaments that happened this weekend that I know the state looks forward to every year. Again, unfortunate the way the calendar is. We had them both on the same weekend, so it affected. I'm sure it affected who went where with the live Greco and the Kobe Singleton. Obviously, two tournaments that are
And I'd
for a
say that the
wonderful, wonderful cause,
Tri
right?
County was probably even better.
And Tri
As
County's
far
down
as
in
deep,
South Florida, right?
I mean, as far as the calendar, listen, I every weekend's stacked now. Uh, every weekend, everybody's out there wrestling. They're big tournaments. It's 11-week season, which is ending very soon. Girls end this week, boys end next week here in Florida. There's just stuff every weekend and some great matches at all those tournaments. You also had Flagler's Rotary, you had the Wolfpack in Tampa, and this week we start getting into conferences. But yeah, I mean, if some of the ones that stood out to me, Eli, I always get his name wrong, Joe LaCour at Sewanee, all the tests at Colby, he's really looking to be about as good of a 106 um, favorite as you can have. Jake Austin had a big win at Colby at 120. Michael Kersey, he won a 1-2 battle at Colby. Uh,
Oh,
just looking through some of my notes here. Nathan Lytle at Flagler Rotary, he stayed unbeaten on the season. A guy to watch from Flagler Rotary, Bartram Trail, Mario DeBella. I got two different messages from coaches saying this kid has stepped up his game. He's undefeated. He won a weight class that had 7 top 10 wrestlers in it.
oh,
Um,
that's pretty good.
I mean, I thought that was impressive. Kyle Nilsson at New Smyrna Beach. New Smyrna Beach actually won Flagler. He beat top ranked wrestler on his way of winning there. At the Tri County, you had Matter Lakes beat Cardinal Gibbons by 2 points in another tight team battle. Um,
It was so much fun to watch on social media, by the way, because you saw the ticking coming. You saw the post, and it was like, oh, they're up one, the two are going in. We got 4 in the finals, 3 on the
Let me
backside, and
let me
it was
pause you
pretty
for a
awesome.
second. Let me
yeah,
pause you for a second and ask the question of, we just finished duels and Matter Lakes was unbelievably talented and everything else. Is Gibbons, I mean, given their hammers, have a legitimate shot to make a run against them in traditional? Or do they have a better shot there? Because you now introduce, Zephyr Hills Christian athletes, First Baptist kids and all these sorts of things. Those points are gonna get diffused now. You know what I mean?
they do. I'm just pulling up my notes real quick because I did update my team rankings, and if I remember correctly, Matter Lakes was well ahead in my picks. Cardinal Gibbons does have some strength. They'll have two, you would assume, champions. One champion,
I
one
would,
finalist. In the Mako
yeah,
brothers, you have, I'd say,
Florio.
3 or 4 guys that can compete for a title. I don't know if Gibbons is deep enough though. When you get into a deeper tournament, and the Matter Lakes kids, they're going to be up there also, and
Yeah,
they may not all win, but they're going to have a lot more finalists. They're going to have
yeah.
a lot more wrestling, Friday in the semis. So to me, the shock from what my numbers pointed out this week was kind of the gap that they've built on Zephyr Hills Christian in
Hmm.
my rankings, and in how, if my rankings hold true, almost a comfortable win. And First Baptist actually, with with just 5 wrestlers that are ranked, came in third in points because they've got 4 wrestlers ranked number 1 and another one
Yeah,
ranked
because
number
five can
3.
win a
Yeah.
title or at least be in the finals.
So Gibbons, I think, benefited from uh, a deep tournament, but not a super, but not a
A
state
really
level
deep
deep
tournament.
tournament
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
keep that close.
I was just
But
curious.
Gibbons is tough. I mean, I have number 4 in the state. They we know they're going to score 60 points with just the Mako brothers. So
So I don't know if everybody knows this, and this is how I used to do it. I don't know if this is how Brant does his, but when I used to kind of tally up like the team points, it was based on my individual rankings. And I knew that the average champion
yes,
scored 24 and a half points or whatever the
I'm
number was
27
that
is
year.
what I have right now.
27. All right. So, and then you would say, okay, well, if he's ranked number one, he's likely to win. So that would be your 27.5 points. And you know that your second place is going to get about 22 points or whatever the case
Yeah.
was. Third was whatever, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on down the line. So that's how I used to do it. It sounds like that's pretty
That's
similar
how
to
I
how
did.
you used to do
And
it.
people always say something to me about, oh, well, why is this team here? I don't even look at the teams while I'm doing it. I mean, I am.
Right.
I mean,
It's all
I'm
math.
plugging in the
It's
numbers, but it goes into a spreadsheet. I hit calculate and it pops it out. And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that they were number three or, so it really is completely based. And I got this, you and I talked about this years ago because I got this formula stuff from you on it is where I started doing it from. It's just completely based on numbers because I'll have coaches like, oh, well, we won this tournament. Well, I can't go back in every tournament, figure out who had a full lineup, who didn't, so it's just completely based on my rankings. It's completely based on what can happen at the state tournament, state IBT, and the numbers plug in, and that's what we get.
Let me
very
ask you a
cool.
question, Brant.
Yeah.
What do you think about the year that Antonio Morales of Southwest is having?
I mean, random
He's
thing to bring up. He's wrestling well. He's settled in at 13. 13's tough. Uh, you've got
13 is tough.
Lido who's undefeated. You have Morales who's defending or returning state champ.
Ryan Morales, yeah.
But I mean, he's
yeah.
wrestling now. He's 23-9 on
Seems like
season. He won
it
live
seems like
Greco.
every tournament I pull up, I see his name at the top. It just seems like he's having a good year and a good season. And I'm sorry, I kind of ran me through that India. I know you were talking about the tournaments and stuff. Obviously that's the live Greco. Shout out to Jesuit first, Southwest second, George Jenkins third. But sorry, I kind of threw that in there. But I was just looking, and I'm like, man, every time lately I've opened up this to see what the results are on the weekend, I tend to see Antonio Morales up there. Seems to be having a
You know,
decent.
I want to add one thing, and I just saw it this past weekend in Georgia. And that is, look, you guys, everybody could be like talking about the rankings at this moment in time and all these different things and everything else. But things go sideways the week of districts in Florida or the week of areas/regions up in Georgia, and it changes the landscape completely. And I'm going to give you an example. A young man by the name of Gabe Easy, who is a defending state champion as a freshman from Ola High School, who made the knockout finals at 113, right? He didn't make weight at area
Oh,
slash region. So you're you're in a situation where you thought you had an idea of what in the world was going to happen, and now things are going way differently, and that's going to affect your team scores. That's going to affect this. That's going to affect that. Some kid gets the flu. Some kid,
Yeah.
gets a twisted ankle, or this happens or that happens. And I'm telling you, man, things can change on a dime.
I mean, Matter Lakes last year had two top kids miss weight at districts. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it was so
That's a
big that
great.
I
That's
was
a
getting
great
texts.
example. Right.
I was getting
Exactly.
texts all day, like, people, is this true? Did this really happen? I mean, it happens. Someone doesn't plan right, or someone gets sick and has trouble, getting the weight where they need to do. I mean, all sorts of things come up. Hopefully, good news, bad news thing is everybody's sick right now. And so hopefully everybody gets all this sickness. It goes through all the teams and everybody is done being sick by next week because if that happens, then that can really throw a wrench.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and what we see in Georgia this past weekend is the first thing that happens when I go through it is I'm going, well, where's this kid?
Yeah.
Like what? And then you have to go back and kind of try to figure out what happened. And there are kids that surprise in a good way, and that there are things that happen that you're going, what in the world happened? And you're not wrong about the flu or being sick
And
and
there's
it having
injuries
an
we don't know about
impact.
too.
I'm sorry.
There are injuries we don't know
Yeah.
about too. That
Yeah.
there are kids that we're looking at. Oh man, this guy's going to compete, and we don't even know he might not be. He might be done for the year, and the coach
That's
just
true.
hasn't told us, or they're waiting to try to be cleared. I mean, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
So
I tell
it's
you,
all fluid.
it's good. Yeah, I mean, listen, I see Dylan Smith continues to have a great year as well, but I think we had the GMAC girls this week, right? That happened, and we saw South Bay come out of there. Do we have the GMAC boys this weekend, Brent?
yeah. well, I'll get to what's coming up on the girls'
Okay.
side.
Oh,
South
wait, wait,
Dade,
wait, 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 wait. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Congratulations to Joe Blasucci in Somerset for winning the Kobe Singletary this weekend.
yes,
Okay.
they
Cool.
did very well.
Want to shout
Um,
out Joe. Good job, Joe.
and Tristan Sains look just so dominant. I don't think anybody has scored a point on him from Florida this year.
You might say it's insane.
Yes,
Well,
in
Michael
the
has been
membrane.
insane. Michael has been insane also.
Yes,
Michael had a great
in the
tournament, and
membrane.
he actually posted because we didn't see him last year much, and he posted on Instagram. We almost have forgot about him after he went through that tournament. So shout out to the Saints family. They've got a great thing
No doubt.
happening. Sorry, go ahead, Brant. I apologize.
No, I mean you brought up so I'll go through the girls'
And
notes I have.
you have a great dog. He's having so much fun behind you. He's
Which one's behind me? Oh,
hanging out. he,
He's not bothered by you at all. I'm just telling
not
you.
at
uh,
all. Look at him. He's laying there like, can I get in on some of this action?
when my wife leaves, all they do is sleep. They don't pay any attention to me, which is how I like it.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
doubt.
I'm not a dog person. I know that's an unpopular opinion. Um, yeah, girls side South Dade, 7 champions, win GMAC again. Uh, Kissimmee Osceola wins the OBC. They double up boys and girls. Uh, they're really showing their depth on the girls' side. Couple girls that stood out to me. Emily Doolittle wins the Trojan. She jumped 10 spots in my rankings this week. It's her second time beating Caceres from Lincoln. Uh, Real tough, real strong. She's got some losses. She's managed to work her way back in with some avenging them and some other big wins. Madeline Bombardier at Mulberry, she jumped 9 spots in my rankings after she won uh, the first ever Polk Ladies IBT this weekend. Bella Guerrero Lajor, I probably messed that up. Sorry, Bella. Columbia, huge weekend for her. 4 top 14 wrestlers at the Trojan. She came out on top. I had coaches telling me that she's the one to watch in the region. I think I have her
Hmm.
third in the region now, but she's coming on strong. She's had some big weekends. Isis Severe, North Miami, her third GMAC title, and she beat Isis Estes Brinson from Palmetto. They're now 3-1 versus Brinson this year. Real two tough girls down in the 305. And the other thing to note, Cheyenne Cruz is now at 190. She wrestled 235 all
Oh.
year. Back at her home weight at 190, which makes that even more interesting because you have Grace Leota there, obviously 2-time champ. And last year's 235 state champ, Serenity Whiting, has been wrestling at 192. So that uh, could get
Oh.
Wow.
interesting.
So that became a very deep weight, huh?
It did. Now, I mean, you might still see some movement, but I thought that was significant. And Cheyenne with another win this weekend.
Yeah,
Very
there's a
cool.
lot going on. So, um, moving forward, first of all, yeah, the Kobe Singletary happened. Shout out to the Southwest who won that, and shout out to Blaine Ison who again put on a wonderful tournament. Went back to his alma mater and where he won a state, where he coached to a state title over there. A lot of great kids, great history there, and he brought the tournament back there, and from what I understand, ran a wonderful tournament again with a lot of great competition. Um, Anything stuck out to you before we move on, Brant, at that tournament? Any guys
At Colby,
that
I,
you
I I grabbed a couple of Colby guys. I've already,
did you get? Okay,
yeah,
cool. We did that
um,
already.
I think I've gone through most of the stuff. If we want to put Florida to bed, um, this is the start of conference championship week. It's the last weekend for girls here in Florida. In fact, next week, if we do this on Wednesday, we'll have already had 3 district tournaments. They start on Monday. Um,
Hmm.
District 10 is on Monday. District 8 and 11 is on Tuesday. But like this weekend for girls, you have girls and boys both doing the BCAA. Girls have Hillsborough. They have Sunshine Athletic. Palm Beach County has both boys and girls this weekend. The LCAC has boys and girls. Seminole County boys and girls. Um, and then on the boy side also, you've got the Metro, you've got Cape Coast, you've got the GMAX, which is always one of the best conference tournaments to watch. 5 Star, Southwest 10, and then there's a few other tournaments for the boys as they kind of wrap up this weekend too. There'll still be some next weekend. Hillsborough makes them do the last weekend. Uh, I think there's a tournament in Lemon Bay has a tournament. I think there's a Polk County tournament. There might be one in Southeast, but most teams um, wrap it up this weekend on the boys' side, and the girls will get through their counties that start tonight, and they'll get ready for districts.
I have a question before we get to
And we'll have everything districts on CabaWrestling.com. Every results,
yes, yes.
every advancement, region previews, all sorts of stuff.
And he
Woo, region
posted
previews. That's
he
a
made
lift.
yes, he made a great post on scheduling yesterday. I actually went in there and looked at all the scheduling to see what was going on. But Brand, is there somebody before we put a bow on this because we're getting ready to go into district week and the end of the year here? Are there any kids that are up in your rankings right now? I'm sure there's a lot of kids in the rankings that were not ranked when we first started the season, but um, is there one or two kids that you just didn't even see coming and they
I,
just showed up and they're in your rankings now and
I
they're
mean, there's more to even even list. I mean,
oh
that's
yeah, I didn't know if there
I
was
mean, I think the ones that stand out are like that you didn't see coming just because you know, but like Jonathan Klohecki at the Villages, he's ranked #1. He's a New York State placer. He moved here as a senior. He's 42-0.
is that all?
Obviously, he wasn't ranked in my rankings before the year. There's a few other guys like that are new to the state, and it's always curious to see how they battle it. But I mean, my rankings look a lot different than they did at the start of the year. There's
Yeah, it's always
Yeah.
fun. I just didn't know if you. I'm sure you sit there sometimes doing ranks. You're like, oh shit, where'd that girl come from? Where'd that guy? Wow, didn't see that one coming.
um,
Or you see a win or loss that happens over the weekend, and you're like, huh, interesting.
I mean, those happen. I mean, my rankings are usually pretty good.
Yeah. Listen, how many
I like
times have
seeing
I
my
called
rankings
you?
when you have like a 13 battle of 14 and they
Oh,
go in this sudden
how
victory.
many times have I texted you and I said, man, I just watched your number 14 battle your number 15 to a sudden victory. And he's like, oh, well, I must have got that one right. Like they went to, that's cool. Well,
I mean,
uh,
but
uh,
yeah, just to bring it up, there's I went for 12 kids this week that made debuts on my rankings 18 or higher. Um,
wow.
so they either just got a big. Some of them were on my radar. Some of them, actually, these are all on my radar now that I'm looking at. Except one or two maybe came out of nowhere, and got big wins and big performances. Jumped in. I mean, Preston Williams, Olympic Heights, debuted at #7 this week. After having now he didn't have big results this past weekend, but someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, these weren't put in track." And they were good wins. Fouled Mali at Olympia, moved up to #9 in heavyweights. He was unranked. Tedrick Lee, Columbus, Spencer Voss, Miami Christian. I mean, these are all kids that were not ranked all year. And Spencer
Yeah.
Voss was at Southridge last year, so I had him. I was watching him, but
Well,
he's
I
at
mean,
Miami
I,
Christian this year. He was the
I,
backup at Southridge last year.
yeah, I don't have to look it up, but I mean, I know a couple kids that are in your rankings now based on me calling you, not their
Yeah,
coaches, because, and I don't understand coaches. You guys, I know that you guys preach rankings mean nothing and you just got to go out and wrestle and you got to do this. I'm sure Jason, being a wrestling coach, would tell you the same thing. But some of these kids, they love to get a little shout out. They love, like, they're kids, right? When we were younger, we loved to see our name in a little liner ads in the newspaper that said you won your match or whatever, tennis, basketball, whatever sports. But I mean, I have seen some great wrestlers out there, and I have contacted Brant, and he's like, "This that you are the first person that has told me about this kid all year." And meanwhile, the kid uh, loses a close match in the finals to a number 4 ranked kid in the state, and this kid
which I
isn't
would have
even
had
ranked.
on Sunday
Right,
by the time I saw it. But I listen,
right,
coaches reach out to me all the time. Parents reach out to me. Wrestlers reach out to me. I
right.
mean, if you guys knew how many messages I get,
No, I'd
and how many
imagine.
messages I get from people telling me something I've already looked at,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I don't, but I
Oh,
never say no because I don't want to ever tell someone not to send me information.
yeah, you would
Correct.
have seen the name.
Right.
Yeah, you would have seen the name by Sunday. But I'm sitting there watching these kids wrestle, Jason, and I'm texting him going, "Have you heard of, you know, Joey Wrestler?" And he's like, "I know the name because I know what team he's on, but I haven't seen much." And I'm like, "Man, he just beat this kid, and beat this kid, and beat this kid."
Yep.
He's like, "Well, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out, and it's always fun." But
I
Anyway, the
mean, my
transit.
favorite thing about doing rankings is that stuff, is finding new kids and seeing results that people that I didn't expect. I
Well,
mean,
and
Yeah.
as much as it's a drain, and as much as Sunday, Monday, Tuesday just destroys me every week. This week I was actually done on Monday. Um, it's
good for
neat
you.
to be able to go through all of the results and see what happened.
Yeah, and I think obviously with my son's team is more of a, they don't have superstars on it, so we go to some tournaments that maybe some others wouldn't see. So I get to see some kids from different parts of the state, and it's pretty cool. Um, but anyway, yeah, so that's Florida. Put a bow on it. Brant obviously does a great job covering Florida wrestling, and man, gets us all the
Postseason's here
news, and
almost. I mean, I guess
can't wait.
technically
Good
we
luck
can
to
we can count
everybody, right?
conference championships as postseason too. But yeah, it's all wrapping
Yeah,
up. I
we
can't
got
believe we're
conferences,
here.
counties, districts. Um, awesome. So, Jason, man, it's only 11:38 or something, so we got plenty of time for you to shout out the rest of the Southeast.
So I mean, we've talked about this in for consecutive weeks now, and talking about it, and that is Alabama and Georgia are just a little bit ahead of kind of Florida is in their process. So again, if you haven't listened previously, um, Georgia just finished their area slash regions, which if you're in Florida, that is equitable to your district level. There are three steps. In Alabama, because you have fewer kids, fewer schools, and everything else, there's only two steps. It's a sectional level, and a state level, and they'll wrestle sectionals this weekend. Georgia, their second level is a sectional. It's called sectionals as well. Yeah, they're going to wrestle that this weekend. And then in 10 days or so, not even 10 days,
Wow.
they will have the state tournaments for both Alabama and Georgia. Couple shout outs outside of that, just real quick. There's and I know I'm not really covering North Carolina and all them at the moment, but North Carolina and South Carolina are both wrestling their state duels right now. Tennessee just did their state duels championships this past weekend. Saw a lot of information from those teams and everything else. Cleveland rolls again. I think Baylor won in Division Two, which was a big deal for them because it's pretty competitive down in Division Two, small schools in Tennessee. Um, but the things that stood out, and in the state of Georgia, I can talk about the state of Georgia specifically because state of Alabama, it's their first weigh-in of the postseason coming up, so we don't really know a whole lot about that. Um, but in the state of Georgia, there were some interesting kind of movements, and I talked about Gabe Easy not making weight, returning state champion, who is no longer in the running for a state championship
Wow.
this year. That we have a few state champs did not make it for one reason or another. I don't actually know why, but they weren't in the results, so that's what it is. But if we were to boil it down, I think to the headlines, these are my headlines from the state of Georgia. Number one, 6A 138. Now that everybody's locked in on their weights, 6A 138. If you're in Macon, you should watch it. That bracket includes three two timers.
Wow.
Okay. Maddox MacArthur out of Buford, Blue Stifler out of Mill Creek, and Hunter Prosen out of Camden. All three are at that weight. That will be a fun weight
Wow.
to watch. Um, 4A 190 has got two state champions and two state runners up in that weight class. So that's another weight class that, I mean, it's crazy to me. So again, context, right? We went from seven classes to six classes. So in Georgia. So what we saw this condense into, imagine Florida going from three to two. Well, now you have some 1A state champions who are meshed with the 2A state champions, and you're going to have, champion versus champion in some of these different weight classes. And that's what we have in the state of Georgia. One of the things that's really fun in the state of Florida is you're now getting to see Somerset come up to 2A. You're seeing different kind of matchups and that sort of thing. And that's one of the things we're enjoying in the state of Georgia is that, Buford, Camden, we see that. but we don't always see some of the other battles of kids from other classes because they've been kind of working in other classes and they just haven't necessarily crossed paths with these kids. Now we're going to get to see them with a state title on the line. It's going to be super fun to watch.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds interesting. So I guess when they change, like you were mentioning, if they went from 1 to 3, but when they change from 7 to 6, I'd imagine they changed the limitations to the school requirements. So now instead of it being 3,000 school, 3,000, they probably kind of slice it in half, and some move down to 5, some move down to 4, some move down to 3, right? And they kind of, is that probably how
yeah.
that works?
Yeah, so what happened was so most of the 7A schools last year became 6A schools. A couple of 6A schools stayed up, right? And you saw that movement kind of all the way down, and a lot of it stayed the same, although 4A 190 and 138, we had this kind of perfect storm of really top kids kind of coming together, and now we're going to see, returning state champions battle each other out, which is going to be super cool.
Well, because
But
they're
the
kind of in the
class
middle, right? They're kind of in
yeah,
the
they're in
middle.
the
So
middle. But
they'll
what's
come up.
funny is the class actually that grew the most was 1A, the smallest class, because the best 2A teams from last year, except for Rockmart, moved down to 1A. So in 1A, you have brackets that could potentially remember we have to get through sectionals to get to state. But let's say all these kids get through sectionals to state. There's at least one weight class that has 13 kids who were at the state tournament last year. So if all 13 of those kids come back at that weight class, you have basically a bracket full of kids who have all been there before. And they're battling it out to kind of figure out who's going to win a state title. And this doesn't even include some absolutely great freshmen who have now been added to the mix because, again, context for you guys in Florida. Freshmen in the state of Georgia have never competed in the state tournament,
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah. So in the state of Florida, you got a Giovanni Solis or you've got a whomever like wrestling in seventh and eighth grade and so on and so forth. State of Georgia, you're not allowed. Your
So
first time ever. High
high
school is
school's
high
10th,
school.
11th. High school is
No, it's
10th,
nine.
11th, 12th.
Ninth, 10th,
No,
11th,
he's
12th.
saying there are freshmen that are wrestling there that have never been there before, but they're wrestling there now. But they
Oh,
like
because they were middle schoolers last year.
because we have so
I'm
many
sorry.
seventh and eighth
I
graders that by the
I'm
time
not
they're
that.
freshmen, they're two, three
Yeah,
time state placers or qualifiers.
I'm not that smart. I thought you were saying freshmen don't get to wrestle. They have their own freshman state tournament, which would be kind of cool. But yeah,
So yeah, think about like,
I think Ohio has that, by the way.
Matty Singleton, who wrestled at Woodward Academy, right? He was a four-time state champion in the state of Georgia. Well, he only had 4 shots. He was 4 for 4, right? In the state of Florida, Sawyer Bartelt was a four-timer,
yes.
He was 4 timer because he wrestled at
right?
Doral in 3A
And he
as an
lost
eighth
in the
grader, and he lost in the
finals, right? So while they're both four-timers, Bartelt had more opportunities to take a shot at winning a state title. Singleton only had those 4 shots. So it's not a big deal, but it's something that if you go outside of your state, you don't necessarily know. And you go over to the state of Alabama, and they're just like Florida. You can wrestle in seventh grade or eighth grade, especially in rural schools in the state of Alabama. They have seventh, eighth graders who compete, that sort of thing.
And to kind of piggyback off that, because I think this is what you're kind of getting at, is you can wrestle Fargo, you can wrestle Super 32, you can wrestle all these. You talk to these kids, they're still nothing like your state tournament.
That's
And
right.
there's still something about there's something when you walk into that arena and when it's your first time, no matter how good you are, sometimes the
The bright
ambiance takes
lights.
over you. So the freshmen in Florida have the benefit where they've been there. Some of them, the ones that have
Yeah.
been able to wrestle in seventh and eighth grade. But your first time, whenever it is, you go to a state tournament. It's an experience that you can't mimic, you can't practice for. And so in Georgia, that affects the freshmen because this is their first time, no matter what.
And we've seen it. How many kids have we been in Fargo, Jason? And we see them all American. We see them win 3, 4 matches there, 5. I mean, you got to win a ton there to get to the All American thing. But then we go to the state tournament and some of them don't place.
It happens. It's a weird thing. The Georgia State tournament, because there's so many classes. I mean, the level of competition is super good, but there's so many classes, it gets diffused,
Yeah.
right? It's not their most difficult tournament, but
There's something about it.
something about walking into the arena knowing that I can etch my name into a record book of, being a state champion, or, I'm going to be a four-timer. Like I know, well, you know what? There's some seniors who have been here before. They're like,
Yeah,
I'm not willing to give that up to
it's
some
a
freshman.
it's a special place. I mean, I know, and I've seen this with kids over the last 4 years that I've been at the state tournament. But my own kid, I remember him standing up in the stands, looking down and just sitting there and standing there, looking into the arena until the end of his senior year state tournament, just with that face, like, wow, I'm gonna miss this. This was special. And you see the
Hmm.
kids. I'm actually getting chills talking about it. But you see all these kids at the at the state tournament, and they just say, man, it's special to be at Silver Spurs and wherever it is in Georgia and all over the
Make
country.
it, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Well,
why you remember what happened in Pennsylvania with the Bishop McCourt, and and they're like, oh, but they get to go everywhere and they get to do this or that. Yeah, but those
it
kids
is
want
special.
those kids want to wrestle at Hershey Park, right? And
Yes,
that's
they do.
something that they do. So I agree with you guys 100%.
All right, so I want to wrap up the talk about the state of Georgia with some interesting information. I love this information. I think it's super cool. I'm a numbers geek and that sort of thing. First, before I get to the specific numbers, I think it's very interesting. Um,
Oh, is
we've
this the
got
text that you teased us with? You were
yes, yes, yes. Uh, yes.
I'm ready.
These are there are five girls who make a run for a third state title this year. Okay. Just to give you some context, because I've been doing the media guide for the state of Georgia, there have only been three-timers in the state of Georgia on the girls' side ever. Girls have been wrestling in the state of Georgia since 2019, sanctioned wise. Okay, so there hasn't been a ton of opportunities, but we have an opportunity to almost, really blow it out of the water as far as the number of three-timers in the state. Ollie Weiland, who will have probably Brianna Higgins if they both get there into the finals. That's a super tough match. You got Vera Spencer, Artisman Eaton, who at 130 pounds is probably got the most difficult road. So many talented girls at 130 pounds.
Is
Then
Georgia
of course,
single class girls?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, it is in individual.
Okay.
In duels, they wrestle two divisions.
Okay.
Um, but the thing that's the most interesting to me is that I started tracking this a little while ago, and in 2023 or 2022, 2023, so 3 years ago, okay, the number of teams that had a girl who started the state series. Okay, so that means that they had a girl who weighed in at the beginning of the series. So back at area regions or in Florida, it would be districts, right? There were 198 schools. Okay, and there were 645 girls who did it. Okay,
Ooh,
so not a ton, but a lot, but not bad. A year later, okay, so last year, right, we had 226 teams and 840 girls.
Wow.
So we had a growth of 20 something schools and 200 girls. Okay. This year, this year, we have 251 schools. So we get a few more schools,
23 more.
but we have 1,200 girls who
wow.
That's
wrestled
awesome.
in the area tournament or the region tournament, almost double
2
two
years
years
ago.
ago.
That's awesome.
That's
That is a
awesome.
cool statistic. You read in USA Wrestling, or not USA Wrestling, like you read in USA Today, or you read in this group or whatever. Girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport in the nation. Okay, and they'll cite all these different statistics and all these different things and everything else. And I can tell you, within the state of Georgia, it's not just from 2019 to now. It's gone a little bit, and now it's going up at an exponential rate. And it is very cool to see all these teams with, I mean, the average team now has eight, nine
But
girls. I mean, it's awesome.
I imagine that girls like Amani Jones have been
Huge,
pausing huge for girls in
huge.
Georgia, and seeing those little girls, seeing somebody like that go out, and she loves her state and she represents her state and she talks about her state. It's awesome. But yeah,
But I mean,
um,
to kind of piggyback off that from a Florida side, we have what, a year or two less of sanction, but this year, every single weekend, there are multiple girls only quality tournaments. And I can
Yeah.
tell you, even last year, the year before, there may have been one girls tournament on a weekend, maybe two. And then you'd have a boys tournament that, would have the girls over on the side. Yeah, and,
Mhm.
there'd be a tournament, you'd look, oh, they did have some girls there and check them out. Every single week, I'm going through 6, 7, 8 girls tournaments, quality competition tournaments, some of them singular girls tournaments. These girls are getting just so many more repetitions, so much more access and chances, and it's made my
oh,
job so much harder, and I love it because it
oh,
just, if you look back, I mean, I have like a huge spreadsheet, and like every week you look at these girls' weight classes, and I have 80%, 80, 90%. I have them competing each weekend, and you go back just 2 years, and that wasn't the case. And
oh,
they
and
Yeah.
may
speaking,
wrestle at a tournament, they may wrestle against some guys, they may have girls. There are just girls tournaments every single weekend.
well, and I speaking of people that surprise, like I go to some girls tournaments and then I'm seeing some girls I never seen before, never heard, and I'm like, hey, excuse me, who's she? And they're like, oh, that's blah 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 blah. She's a freshman this year, and she came from this and this, and I'm like, holy moly, she's
Yep.
good. And they're like, yeah, she's two-time judo this and one-time jiu-jitsu this and one-time gymnastic this, right? And then they come into this sport, and they're
All
doing some
right.
damage, and it's
So
awesome.
I want to end it with a question.
Mm,
Okay. Based
I didn't know we
upon
were
the
going to be
information I
quizzed.
just gave you. Okay. And and we're gonna turn hard right now. You're
Uh-oh.
not actually gonna anticipate this question at all. Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Uh-oh.
So earlier I mentioned that Baylor won the Tennessee state
Yes.
championship, dual state
Yes.
championship. Okay. And they have a outstanding young woman by the name of Riley Sturgill who wrestles for Baylor. Okay. In order for them to, because she's a tough little son of a gun, right? She didn't win her match at the dual state tournament. But she got them points. She avoided giving up
Avoided being right.
six, right? She was able to do so. By doing so and stepping in and wrestling for the boys, she's now ineligible for the wrestle for the girls state championship, a state title she has won the last 2 years. Do Tennessee takes a very hard stance that you can't go back and forth between the two boys and girls.
Wow.
The girls can, once girls make a choice, they have to make that choice.
That's terrible for her. I mean, it's terrible for her, but I read the article.
Oh,
I
so you knew
saw
it.
the
You knew
post.
this. Okay.
I saw obviously the assistant coach there came from like having prep, so he's a tremendous. Is he assistant or head coach? I don't remember. But I saw him in a talking to her in a video, and she made the choice to help her team
Well, yeah,
do
but
this. Like they gave her the option to say yes or say no. But how can the state, like we've seen Gabby Tedesco do that. This year we saw Kiki Bush do that. We've seen Grace Leota. I mean,
Well,
throughout the
that's the reason I
state,
brought
we've
it up
seen
because in
girls
other
do that.
states they do this all the time, but in Tennessee,
That's yeah.
this has long been the rule. This has long been the rule that you can't do so.
As much as it's grown in Florida, there are areas here that if the girls didn't wrestle boys, they'd never wrestle.
I think
Even
that's
now, there
yeah.
you know, and so I disagree with Tennessee on a lot of things. This is just the latest.
This is just the latest.
Look, I don't
Oh,
want to. I'm not taking a stance. I don't. I haven't really thought about how I think about it, whether I agree with it or I disagree with it or anything like that. The reason I bring it up again, the reason I bring up all these things is you got like we live in bubbles and we understand our worlds, and whether you live in South
Yes.
Florida and you understand that bubble, and then you get outside that bubble and you understand Florida as a bigger bubble, and then you get outside of Florida and you understand the Southeast or you understand whatever as a bigger bubble. Not everybody in the sport does it the same way,
Right.
right? And think about whether you like the things that they do, you dislike the things that they do. Alabama seeds their sectional tournament coming up, right? They seed their state tournament coming up. Are there problems with seeding? 100%. Is it better than the alternative of some stupid formula? I think so. But again, all these things happen. We as a sport have to figure out kind of
Yeah.
how to make things better for the sport. And that's really what I'm kind of pushing on.
we have to. And
And the
if you
girls are
guys,
just doing awesome.
I don't know if you guys, I mean, Coach Coach Connor Beebe made a great post. I don't know if you guys saw it this early last week or something about the state of our sport, and if you didn't see it, everybody go back and look at it. It made a lot of sense. And we just, as a sport, we need to positivity. We need to help bring it up, and it's in a tough spot right now, especially collegiately because of the situation with the NIL and limitations and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we need to help the sport, not hinder it, right? And I
Yeah.
think
I mean,
seeing a girl like that step up and do what she did was awesome. What'd you say?
I was gonna say I agree with that, but the other thing with this, especially with girls wrestling, right or wrong, and I think I we know how I feel about authority. Um, a lot of these states, you had to fight so hard to get girls the chance.
Yeah.
Just like state duels, people complain about state duels here in Florida every year that it's not seeded, that teams don't make it. They spent 20 years getting state duels approved by the FHSAA. Um, we have to work so hard to get the things that are right. And so I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Dan's saying and also what you're saying, Jason. You have to realize other states are doing things different. You can try to build off that, but at the same time, sometimes it feels like we're fighting just to get the minimum done, and you'll take whatever they offer you. And they'll say, you know what, we would love to have seeded state duels. We would love to have a tournament where if you lose, you wrestle back and everybody stays there all weekend. But the alternative is what they gave us for 20 years. And that was no state duels.
I agree.
Um, you know, you want girls to be sanctioned. That was fought for years. Um,
The,
and even when they finally got it, you still had to wait 2 years. I mean, you have to kind of grow, but you also have to realize that sometimes some of this change has built-in walls that any sport needs to get past. That you
yeah.
have to work through. And so change looks, we're smart. We see what can be changed, but just know how hard sometimes it is when you have these bureaucratic organizations that run these things that do a ton of stuff and they have so many different
Well,
sports that they need to stick to their their guidelines on. So that it's a thing there in the middle. Watch others,
right.
learn from them, see what you would like to change, and then figure out if that's something that can be changed and go about the right ways of doing it and not just be negative towards everything all the time.
Well, and the other part is that not everybody is an advocate of seeding, like the state tournament. I
True.
mean, there are coaches that are not, and they make valid points about why they don't want to. So, I'm just for me, and sitting back and having the opportunity to like look at lots of different states and the way lots of people do those different things. I felt very, and I have the historical perspective to look back on the
Yeah.
state of Florida for the last 40 years or whatever, before you jump on a computer on a Facebook post and like just begin your rant about how things should be a particular way, I would just caution everybody to think there are a lot of really good people in the sport trying to do a lot of really good things. Just because they disagree with you about how we should be doing them or the process and the effort it's taken to get to this point in time, don't diminish kind of that history and their knowledge of kind of what is taken to get to this moment in time.
I
So
agree. And I think even at the Bear, I think even I've heard people come out for Florida and say, even at the bare minimum, I would love to see the top four seeded, because at least we know if everything goes chalk, we're not going to see, like when we saw that match a few years back with Lake Highland Prep and American Heritage in the semifinals with the number 1 and 2 kid in the country, not just in our state, in a semifinal match, right? Like that should have been in the lights on a finals match in the center of the arena, right? So at the bare minimum, I would love to see at least the top four seeded. I
But
think that
again,
would
the
be
point is,
great. But yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I get it. But I do think
because I
I'm
can
just
tell you right
saying,
now, if you put 400 coaches in a room and try to get them to seed and agree on something for seeding, you know,
no, I think what they should do is the FHSAA should, at the end of all the regional tournaments, they should pull up Cabra.com and they should look at his
CabraWrestling.com. I don't know what
Cabra
Cabra.com
Wrestling,
is. Send someone
CabraWrestling.com
to the wrong site.
and CabraWrestling.com, and they should go, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 for that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 for that. And I think that's the way it should be.
That's a lot of pressure on me.
And they should do that. And then
I
everybody
give
else
away
can,
so many proved wrong stickers.
yeah,
I don't know.
that's perfect. They can all say, you use Fran Parsons, man. He sucks. He doesn't look at this person, that person. And then we can get all
Wow.
that would be great. That would
that
be awesome.
that
We
was
could
the
hear the
thing.
bitching.
That's really
That is a thing.
You know,
he's built that up there. He's been wanting to say that for a while.
No, I
That,
love it.
that flew out. That was smooth
Yeah.
the way you delivered
It was
that.
great.
That was you weren't acting.
Yeah.
I want to end it. I
No.
really want to end the conversation though with going back to the numbers on Georgia and the girls and
And
just a real. I'm just super impressed. I love to see the growth of the sport. Women's wrestling, NCAA's is now an NCAA
yep.
sport. The girls in high school are growing by leaps and bounds. I want to see the boys continue to grow, and as much as the girls, we're obviously a much further away, but celebrate our success, man.
Yes.
Talk about these things because this is
Yeah.
super cool.
And
And don't read
protect
the comments.
yeah,
Never read the
and
comments.
and protect the Olympic sports. Protect the Olympic
Agreed.
sports because it's fun to watch. And that being said, peace, everybody. Peace.